Economics YouTube page 13. We're continuing our analysis of the different markets out there for you to invest money, to earn money with the money you've already earned from your employment or from maybe some of these other accounts, these savings account investments that you've put your money into, whatever. These are ways that you can invest money to make money, but we're getting into the more riskier areas. So let's go ahead and begin. Investing into a company. So have you ever heard of investing in stocks and bonds? Have that words ever come across? You've ever come across those words? That's what we're talking about. You're investing in actual companies and in governments in many cases. When you invest in a company, you're buying a portion, a share, or multiple shares, and you're hoping that those shares that you buy are going to increase in value. Just like when you buy a savings account or a CD, like we talked about in the last video, you're doing it because you're hoping that you're going to get more money in interest. Well, when you invest in a company, you're probably not getting any interest. You're just hoping the value of what you bought is going to increase. So corporations that are, and many companies that go public, that means they're selling pieces of themselves. They divide the company up into a certain amount of shares, and there's a value placed on them based on the value of the company. And they hope that people will buy it because, again, it's kind of like you're loaning them your money. You're investing money in the company, and if they do, they can use that money to expand the company, to grow the company, and if successful, the value of their share goes up, and then you can then sell that share, if you so choose, at a later date, and you get money back. Like if you buy something for $10 and you sell it for $20, you make profit. That's the same idea here. Well, instead of an object that you can hold, though there's pieces of paper they give out, you're buying ownership of a company. So there's a lot of risk. What if you invest in a company that's terrible? Or maybe they're good right now and then they fail. They make some bad mistakes. Well, you don't get your money back. Unlike all the accounts we talked about in the last video, these are not insured investments by the U.S. government. So you could lose it all. Everything you invest, you can lose. But the reward is high, potentially very high if you invest smart. There are tons of people across the world who, for as long as there's been this kind of idea of investing in company and shares, have built their whole careers around this. This is what they do for a living. They invest in companies, sell, trade stocks. This is what they do. This is spending money to make more money. That term means a lot more than just stocks and bonds, but here that's all you're doing if you were going to make this a hobby, if you're going to make this a career, or even just something you want to just dabble in once in a while. So stock returns, high risk, high reward. Stock returns pay dividends if they're doing well. Dividends are those profits, capital gains, meaning if you buy, let's say, just one share of a company and it costs $100, that'd be a pretty successful company if it costs that much, $100. Most companies are going to be much less than that, but let's just say $100. It's an easy number. And then let's say 4 months from now, you see that it's the stock, the value of the stock. That's what it's kind of called when you're talking about the stock market. That's where you would analyze and look at how things are doing. That's where all that data is centralized, so you can see, is the company doing well? Is the value of the share increasing or decreasing? If it increases, then you've made a capital gain and you get paid dividends of the difference. So if you invest $10, you get, and then the value, or if you invest $100 and the value goes up to 110 after a few months or days even, or who knows, you can then choose to sell it, and then you get that money, you get the value of what you sold. So if it's worth 110, you get 110, you just made $10. That doesn't sound like a lot of money, and that means for a few months that was $100 you didn't get, right? Well, if it went, a stock value, if a share went up 10%, that's a pretty good increase. That's a really strong increase. But if you only invest one share for $100, it's not that much. But let's say you had I don't know, $100,000 you invested in that company, and you bought enough shares that you spent $100,000, you got a lot of different shares. 10% then is $10,000. So as you can see, this is why some people can build their careers around it, because they're going to invest a lot of money, but that's because they can get a lot back, because they can get rates that, if they're doing well, that beat anything you're going to get in any savings account. There's no interest rates that are going to be that high unless you're a credit card company, and you're not. So capital loss, though, that's when you lose money. So you invest in a company and the value of the stock of the company, of the shares, goes down. That's a capital loss. Finally, another incentive for some is that if you buy a few shares, you're not going to have much influence. Like, I was really excited as a kid when I heard my dad told me that he had invested in some shares of Toys R Us. And while that is kind of cool and that he was like somehow involved with Toys R Us, he had no influence because he just bought a few shares. He was trying to make some money on the value of the stock. Now, if my dad was a millionaire and bought maybe like 10,000 shares, or I don't know, thousands of shares, well, if you buy enough shares of a company, you now get a voice in the decisions that company makes. Because remember, you are buying ownership of that company. Now, if you only buy one share and you own less than 1%, no one's really going to listen to you. If you own 40% of the company's going to listen to you, because that's a lot of money you've invested. They want you to keep that money with them so badly, they're going to listen to your input. So there is that potential. Now, bonds are different. Bonds are more strict loans. Stocks are kind of like loans when you buy them, but not really. But bonds are straight up loans. Now you have zero possibility of influencing their decisions, because this is like an agreed upon loan. You're going to give that company money and you get a bond certificate. So like you could buy a bond from McDonald's if they were choosing to sell them. They don't have to. Companies who want to hit the big time have to sell shares of themselves. They have to. You have no choice. A little local company has a choice. Walmart, no choice. If they want to be as big as they are, they have to. They don't have to sell bonds. Companies decide if and when they want to sell bonds, because these are like loans. You lending them money, and you are going to get interest back. You are going to get, well, not interest, a dividend back. You are going to get a capital gain back. If the company does well and is able to pay you back. Now, if the company crashes and burns, maybe you don't get any money back because there's no money to come back. However, while you have zero chance of getting corporate influence, the one benefit you do have is if the company does crash and burn and there's not enough money to pay back everyone who's trying to sell shares and everyone that's trying to sell their bonds back, if you're a bondholder, you get priority over the shareholders. The shareholders are the people that are buying ownership shares in the company. If you're a bondholder, not a shareholder, you have priority in getting paid. So it's not insured money, but you have a higher chance of getting your money back through bonds. And governments do the same thing. The Treasury Department will offer Treasury bills, Treasury notes, Treasury bonds. The short term is just, instead of saying Treasury, saying T. Okay, I'm not going to say Treasury bond, I'll say T-bond. To get money from the people. They get lots of money from taxes, but sometimes they want to fund something like an education program, the military. World War II, lots of bonds were sold to people, and citizens made a lot of money on those bonds because the government needed money to build tanks and bombs and stuff to fight World War II. The government has done that other times in its history. And you can still, even to this day, buy bonds from the company, or from the government. So you're loaning your money to the government, and when you cash that bond sometime in the future, kind of like a time deposit or a CD, you get a big bonus back. You get a big dividend back. There's usually a minimum investment, because this is usually if you're investing in if you're buying a bond from America, from the American government, you're pretty safe with your bond. You're probably not going to lose the money because America's probably not going to crash and burn, anytime real soon. So you're pretty safe, but there's a minimum investment. They're not going to waste their time with a bond for $5. Usually it's at least $1,000 if you want to get a bond, so that at the end of the period of time you get that money back. This can be a very lucrative way to make money if you can afford to give up that investment for a certain period of time. You can't just buy a bond and then a week later sell the bond real quick and expect to make profit. This is more of a long-term thinking. That's why it's great for a retirement or a savings plan for something long-term. Stocks can be more short-term if you're lucky, but bonds are definitely more long-term because we're talking about long-term loans you have to allow to maintain. Plus there's tax benefits. Regular bonds, no tax benefits. Treasury bonds are not going to be taxed by state and local taxes. So usually when you get a paycheck or you make any money at all, there's state taxes, local taxes, and federal taxes. Well, bond profits, you still have to pay federal taxes, but those profits are going to be a lot. Those profits are going to be greater for your investment than a non-treasury bond, a company bond, because they're going to exempt you from local taxes, state taxes. And that's it about stocks and bonds, at least a brief overview of it. There's a lot more to learn about it, but that's enough for now. You want to go ahead and move on to the video for